Welcome back to the DAC Recap, the show where we recap all things Drexel and Philadelphia sports. As always, I'm your host, Luciano Duffy. Now, let's jump right into it. Welcome to spring. Yes, I know. Spring doesn't officially start till March 20th, and the Drexel spring term isn't until the 29th of March. However, in terms of sports, spring has sprung. The weather is getting warmer, games are being played outside, and baseball players are heading down for spring training. In terms of Drexel sports, the new season means more games being played. Last week, the women's soccer team had their home opener postponed, while the field hockey and men's tennis teams also had their scheduled road games postponed as well. On Saturday, however, the women's lacrosse team was able to play in their first game as they traveled down to Lehigh University. It was Drexel who came out on top as they scored 5 of the game's last 6 goals to ultimately beat the Mountain Hawks 19-17. Colleen Grady led the team with 7 points as she scored 4 goals and had 3 assists. Those assists went to junior Carson Harris as she put in a career-high 6 goals. Last night, the Dragons bust down to St. Joseph's University, and this Saturday they are scheduled to go down to the nation's capital to take on Georgetown. Also last Saturday, the girls' basketball team handled Townsend 71-55. In the first half, the Dragons held the Tigers to just 18 points. On the flip side, Drexel was able to drop 21 in the first quarter alone. Kayshana Washington led the scoring for Drexel as she scored 19 points. On Sunday, it was a different story, as this time it was Townsend who scored 70-plus points as they won 77-62. Fouls is what did Drexel in, as they committed 23 of them that led to Townsend grabbing 21 free points from the line. The girls will return home for their final 2 games against JMU this weekend. On Saturday, it will be Drexel's pink game. On Sunday, it will be the last regular season game as they try to better their position for a CAA championship run. As for the men's basketball team, they haven't played a game since February 7th. They hope to get back on the court tomorrow night as they travel down to JMU. This is their last scheduled regular season game as they wait for the news of if any of their 11 postponed games will be played this season. If not, they're on to the CAA championship as well. Going back to Dragons that actually got to compete last weekend, last Sunday marked the official start of the men's soccer, men's tennis, and women's soccer teams' seasons. The men's soccer team had the best result of the bunch as they shut out Nova 3-0. Senior Lailu Darnaju led the way as he scored 2 goals for the Dragons. This Saturday, the boys will head over to SJU for their second match of the season. As for the men's tennis team and the women's soccer team, last Sunday was much less rewarding. Both teams traveled and subsequently lost to NJIT. The women's soccer team will be playing today, February 25th at 3:30 versus the Wildcats of Villanova, right on Vitus Field. As for the men's tennis team, they will have to wait to this weekend in order to bounce back from their opening season loss. Meanwhile, for the Sixers, they went 3-1 last week as Joel Embiid continues to build his case for MVP. After almost having a triple-double and a win versus the Rockets, Embiid dropped a career-high 50 points against the Bulls. The process was absolutely money behind the free throw line, making 15 of his 17 from behind the line. The Sixers won the game 112-105, as Tobias Harris also pitched in with a double-double. The only loss the Sixers had last week was against the Raptors in Tampa, where they lost 110-103. It was the Raptors' three-point shooting that led them to a win, as they shot 41% from behind the arc. Even though they lost, Embiid was still dominant on the glass, grabbing 17 rebounds. Ben Simmons led the scoring for the Sixers with 28 points. In their second game against the Raptors last week, the Sixers were able to squeeze by, winning 109-102. The Sixers had a blazing hot start as they led the Raptors by 19 points at the end of the first quarter. Furkan Korkmaz led the team with 16 points in that quarter alone, as he added 4 three-pointers from behind the arc. Next week, the Sixers will head back home as they close out the first half of the regular season back in the Wells Fargo. The Flyers were able to hit the ice as their depleted squad faced off against the Rangers last Thursday. They hung with New York for 3 periods and even forced an overtime. The game ultimately came down to a penalty shootout that Philly dropped 2-1. Flyers fans can't be too mad at this result, as they were short-staffed with many offensive players sidelined due to COVID-19 protocols. On Sunday, the Flyers traveled to Lake Tahoe to play the Boston Bruins. The game was ugly, as the lack of depth really hurt the Flyers. The Bruins ended up winning 7-3. The only thing that wasn't ugly about this game were the views. This outdoor event features some great shots of an NHL game being played with mountains in the background. Oh, and Gritty really enjoyed his trip out west. He updated fans via Twitter with videos of him snowboarding, hiking, taking a helicopter ride, and even getting into a snowball fight with Blades the Bruin. I'm glad at least one Flyer had a good trip to Lake Tahoe. All of the Phillies have officially reported to Clearwater, Florida for spring training. They are currently practicing and getting ready for the season. Newly re-signed catcher JT Realmuto fractured his thumb and will be immobilized for 2 weeks. The Phillies hope for him to be ready for opening day. This weekend, the Phillies will get their first taste of real action as they play the Detroit Tigers on Sunday. And last, but certainly not least, we have the Eagles. No real news has happened surrounding the organization in the past week. I'm kidding. By now, I'm sure you've heard that Carson Wentz has been traded to, surprise, surprise, the Indianapolis Colts. Reports later deemed that the Colts were the only team vying for Wentz, as the Bears dropped out weeks ago. Now, let's try to make sense of this trade. In return for Carson Wentz, the Eagles gained the Colts' 2021 third-round pick, as well as a conditional 2022 second-round pick that has the potential to become a first-round pick. This pick all depends on how Wentz plays for the Colts next year. The more games and snap he plays, the better of a chance the Eagles get at getting that 2022 first-round pick. The only problem is, the better the Colts play, the lower the pick will be. If I had to guess, I would say that this pick will fall between 15th and 42nd overall. The best case for the Eagles is that Wentz plays the 75% of snaps needed for the second round to become a first round, but the Colts aren't good enough to make the playoffs, resulting in a higher pick for the Birds. The conditions lead me to believe the Eagles will either get a late first round pick or an early to mid second round pick. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the Eagles agreed to take on over $30 million of dead cap from Wentz's contract in 2021. I'm so glad that the Eagles' negative $42 million cap situation is improving. In Indianapolis, Wentz reunites with former Eagles offensive coordinator Frank Reich. He also gets to play behind one of the league's best offensive lines that only let up 21 sacks last year. For reference, the Eagles' O-line gave up 65 sacks last year. Yikes. At the end of the day, this trade made me feel, well, bleh. On the one hand, I'm happy for Wentz, as he embarks on a new chapter in his career in what seems like a better situation for him. I am also happy that this whole limbo QB controversy thing is finally behind us. Or is it? On the other hand, I'm sad to see Wentz go. He is still young and full of potential. Franchise QBs do not grow on trees, and Carson Wentz was a special player in many Eagles fans' eyes. His work off the field and jaw-dropping plays in the link will never be forgotten. Overall, it was the right move to trade him, but the what-ifs will linger forever. Best of luck in Indy, number 11. As for the rest of the roster, the Eagles continue to make moves. They will be releasing wide receivers Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. Both players had their own respective mini legacies in Philadelphia that are quickly being masked by negative recency bias. The pair only played 2 games together in the 2021 season. At their respective age and contract, it is safe to say that neither player fits into the Eagles' long-term plans. Be on the lookout for Zach Ertz to be traded next, as the Eagles continue to blow this whole thing up. That's all for the DAC recap. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram. I'll catch you next week.